Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. This is the ending of MAUER TOTEN explained. We're going to be running through the entire cutscene and some stuff from the boss fight and other bits and pieces to give you a really thorough picture of exactly what's going on and where the story's going to be heading in the next map. Now, if you want something that covers the entirety of Cold War Zombies, I've done full story videos that are really in-depth for each map, and those are all linked in the description down below, including the one for MAUER TOTEN. For now though, let's focus on the ending. The first thing we see in that end cutscene is this red woman who we've been fighting throughout the boss fight. And as you can see on the subs, it says her name is Valentina, who is someone that we already knew from D Machine. Remember when we saw this ghost fragment and Valentina said that she'd done a load of calculations to basically ensure that turning the cyclotron back on would have the results that Omega were looking for? Yeah, that was Valentina. And she impressed Peck at the time, I think, because of how accurate her calculations were. She was really doing good work, seemingly, for Omega at that point. But as we've learned since then, there is more going on with Valentina than meets the eye, specifically because of the fact that she's been communicating with the Dark Ether. And it's in MAUER TOTEN that we get the kind of big reveal, I suppose, of exactly what that communication entailed. So the big reveal is that Valentina is not actually Valentina. That is a fake name, and her real name is Angelica Hannibal Vogel, daughter of Ulrich Vogel. Now, Ulrich Vogel is a really important character in D Machine because he's basically the lead scientist during World War II that sets up Project Endstation. It's Vogel himself who we basically focus on in many of those ghost memory fragments in D Machine, and we also see Dr. Kurtz in there, who is also related to Valentina. That's her uncle. So there's a whole web of history there, and that gives us a little bit of an idea of the motivations behind what Valentina is doing. She really wants to continue her father's dream, continue her father's work, and that's what she thinks she is doing. She says she is here to complete his mission. The dawn of the New Reich begins now. And the person she's been communicating with in the Dark Ether is her father. She has spoken to him, had conversations with him, which for her must have been an incredible experience. And in one of those conversations, she asks him, "Father, when you crossed over to the Dark Ether, what happened exactly? I understand you were doing your duty, but I've always wondered why you left me." And I think that kind of betrays the fact that in some ways she still feels like a little lost girl. She goes on to say that abandoning me must have been almost as difficult for you, speaking to her father, as it was for me. And Vogel says to her, "I never abandoned you. The fact that you're here is testament to that. Now, are you prepared for what comes next? If you are to lead our army, you must ascend." And Valentina replies that her body means no more to her than the name she left behind. She says, "I will proudly remold it for the honor of leading the charge to reclaim Germania. My entire life has built towards this moment." And Vogel responds, "As has mine, child. As has mine." Now, that last line, and really the dynamics of this entire conversation, are really important, okay? You've got, on the one side, Valentina trying to basically make an emotional appeal to her father, sort of exposing the trauma that she's experienced through her life, feeling abandoned, and saying that she just wants to make her dad proud. She's abandoned her previous life. She's now willing to abandon her body. She's willing to do whatever it takes, and she feels like her entire life has led up to this moment. And Vogel's response isn't really fatherly. It's not really comforting. It's just saying, well, to make me proud, you're gonna still have to do a bunch of things for me. And by the way, I never abandoned you. I was there the whole time because I can see everything. Like, it's got this creepy air sort of underneath, this creepy subtext. The reason I'm banging on about all this is that by understanding that stuff, we're gonna understand why she's this red crystally monster trying to take over the world in the end cutscene. And it's this next conversation that, combined with the previous one, it gives you a really juicy picture of what's happening here. So Valentina ascends. She does what her father asks for and becomes this ethereal form. And Vogel says, "You look every bit as glorious as I envisioned. Go head our army and lead them to glory. Unleash the judgment of the Reich on the soft, weak ingrates who sullied the fatherland." It's all very much the sort of thing that you might expect to hear from like a military leader rather than your dad. But then the tone of the voice changes. The register drops, and Vogel suddenly is no longer speaking as Vogel, and is actually speaking as the Forsaken One. He says, "Tell them their day is done. The sun sets forever upon their divided world." And Valentina's surprised. She says, "Father? are you my father? And realizing that the guys had slipped a little, Vogel snaps back to being Vogel again and says, "Oh, of course, my child. My time here has left its mark on me, but I am the one who guided you to this moment. I am still me. Now go. Make me proud one final time. The Reich must rise from the ashes." And so, what we're seeing here, I think, is not Valentina communicating with her father, who's been marked by the Dark Ether, but rather it's just the Forsaken One manipulating her in a way that she pretty much can't resist. She's open about the fact that she wants nothing more than to make her father proud. And when that disguise slips for just a second and she starts to see through it, remember, the Forsaken One straight away goes back to, "Yo, make me proud one final time, by the way. Like, don't forget that I'm your dad and you're emotionally traumatized, and we're just gonna kind of rely on that as the motivating factor to get you to do whatever I need you to do. Cool, okay, glad we're on the same page." It's just straight up evil, and I think that's great. And we know that the Forsaken can disguise itself, it absorbs its enemies. That's actually a thing that it does in the Dark Ether, including absorbing elder gods, old ones, all those sorts of things, and then taking on their powers as powers of its own. Like, the Forsaken is a very interesting enemy in the Dark Ether, and undeniably extremely powerful, and also extremely willing to do subtle tricks like this in order to get its way. And the good thing for the Forsaken is, now that Valentina has literally turned herself into a massive red crystal, she basically has to follow orders. It doesn't matter whether her dad's involved anymore. She works exclusively for the Forsaken now. And so when in the cutscene, and we can go back to this now, she says that the Forsaken will consume this world. You cannot stop the Forsaken. That gives us a little taste of the fact that the conversation about Vogel himself and Vogel reigning supreme is long done now. Vogel's mission long finished. And the true goal now really is for the Forsaken to consume everything. She's in this machine though, like we've trapped her after beating her in the boss fight. Why is she in there, and what's the purple machine on the right hand side? Well, that is simply some raw Ethereum that we collected during the Easter egg, and we're trying to make it into flawless Ethereum. And thanks to the fact that Valentina is herself basically made up of ether crystals, we're instructed by Dr. Peck to use her energy to make that raw Ethereum flawless, and once it's flawless, we'll be able to use it in a warhead similar to what we did in the Outbreak Easter egg, in order to create a massive inversion and try to get rid of this portal that is an opening to the Dark Ether inside this end station lab in Berlin. Once the crystals have been made flawless, Klaus steps up to the plate and says the following.
"I suppose this is the real reason why I'm here. Oh, it is important to feel needed."
It's a noble thing for him to do. I mean, he's an AI and he follows our orders, so you'd sort of expect it, but it's great because it means that none of our crew are going to be sacrificed, and he can simply step into the portal, enter the Dark Ether, and then presumably let the nuke go off and just be blown to smithereens alongside everything else in that area. This is why we get this little epic send-off to Klaus as he steps into the portal. I love the fact that Treyarch did this. I think that it's so cool that we get like an emotional send-off to a robot AI that we've only known for one map. It's just such a Treyarch thing to do. It's great. And then the nuke goes off, the screen goes white, and presumably Klaus is dead, but we actually don't know, so we might see Klaus in a future map. Let's cross our fingers, but it's pretty damn unlikely. The next thing that happens is Kravchenko radios in and says, hey, you can collect your teammate Raptor 1 now. Now, if you're a bit confused as to why he's up there, just handcuffed in the middle of the street, he was captured alongside the Requiem agents that you're playing as in this map in the last Outbreak Easter egg. And through this map, we've been having to follow Kravchenko's commands, who's the one that captured us, because he had Raptor 1 hostage, and we wanted to make sure that Raptor 1 survived, and so we did his bidding, which was to try and take down Valentina, because Valentina had fractured off from Omega to do all this crazy stuff with the Forsaken, which isn't what Kravchenko wanted to do. There is a twist in the story, though, because Kravchenko thinks that he's just going to be able to wipe us all out here with his chopper and kind of tie up a loose end, but we managed to dodge our way to safety, which really shows lack of planning on Kravchenko's part. I mean, this dude is such an amateur. And then as the characters run away, they seem to end up cornered but a portal opens up out of nowhere and the characters all jump through. This was done by none other than Samantha herself, who is regaining many of her dark ether powers that we know she had in her childhood, but that she also began to be able to tap into when, for example, she opened portals in Firebase Z. She caused much of the outbreak in that map. She's gaining strength in her powers as well. It's not like she's just sort of got one thing she can do and she does it over and over again, but she's figuring out what she's capable of, and the sky is the limit, seemingly. She really is a more developed and more powerful woman than we've ever seen before, and the fact that we're getting to see her using her powers for good in this way is really exciting. And then the camera pulls back, and we're watching through a CCTV camera now. And what's this? The director of Requiem is sitting at his desk watching these events unfold, and specifically says Valentina's no longer an issue, which we know. Klaus completed his mission, which we're very thankful for. Project Janus may now proceed unimpeded, and Maxis prevents a problem that must be dealt with because her powers are growing. The identity of the Requiem director has been a mystery since launch. We actually don't know who it is. We know a couple of details about them, specifically that characters like Weaver, Carver, etc. are all a bit suspect of the director. They think that the director acts in very mysterious ways. Many of them don't actually know who the director is, and they even hear the director speaking Russian at one point, which is a little bit suspect, seeing as the Cold War is going on. And the director also seems to spend money, like their research spending, in very weird ways that they don't necessarily agree with. So there have been concerns within Requiem for a while about the director's movements, but this is now our first real confirmation that the Requiem director seems to just be a villain, straight up. Now, if you're wondering about Project Janus, the Janus word is really interesting to me because Janus is a Roman god. If we consult the handy GreekMythology.com, we learn that Janus is the god of beginnings and transitions in Roman mythology, and presides over passages, doors, gates, and endings, as well as transitional periods such as from war to peace. Janus was present in the beginning of the world, guarding the gates of heaven, and also presided over the creation of religion, life, and even the gods themselves. So Janus is no joke, a very, very important god, and the fact that Project Janus is now something that the director is putting into motion could suggest several things. It could suggest that a transition from war, the Cold War, to peace with the Americans winning the Cold War is now going to be attempted. Or it could be that they're trying to create a passage door or gate to the Dark Ether. Or it's a more literal meaning and it's to do with an ending and they're going to end the Dark Ether storyline, which would be pretty crazy. Or it could be something to do with those gates of heaven. There are so many different possibilities here, and I'm sure there's more intel that will dive into more depth with it very soon, so I'll be covering that on my channel. You can look forward to it. But for now, let's leave it there. I think we have a pretty good understanding of what happens in the end cutscene now. We don't know who the Requiem director is, and we're going to have to wait until the next map to find out. The last thing to say, though, because everyone's been talking about it, is the fact that the Requiem director could simply be Edward Richtofen. That is actually a possibility. There's no reason why he couldn't be. We've seen different characters in Requiem and Omega from different nationalities. We've seen different people pretending to be people that they're not. We've seen spies. We've seen all sorts of stuff, right? And we know Eddie is in this world, and we know that we've lost track of Eddie, and we know that the Requiem director has kept their identity a secret. I mean, I know it would be kind of a bit too easy, but it is a genuine possibility. So I figured it would be worth mentioning here. So those are our two main forces at play here. We've got the Forsaken on one side. We have Janus, and we've got the Requiem director on the other. In the middle, we kind of have Omega, and we have the Requiem crew now. And granted, we're still fighting against Omega, but they seem to be a bit less important than they did a few maps ago. So while I expect us to still fight against Kravchenko and stuff like that, and especially against Peck, we're probably going to see more and more of the Forsaken's influence in future maps and less of just Kravchenko himself. Although I think he's still going to be present, don't get me wrong. So if this explanation's been useful, guys, please drop a like on the video and consider subscribing. And like I said at the beginning, that full story of MAUER der Toten is linked below and on screen right now for you to click through to as well. Also, maybe give the Easter egg a go. It's a really good one that's linked too. See you next time, guys. Bye for now.